The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, feels like it's been a while since I've done one of these live things, but feels good to be back. The season is right around the corner. We are 10 days officially away from the rookies reporting to training camp for the Commanders. The veterans report on the 22nd, and then we're off and we're running, and the 2025 campaign gets underway. So very excited. We're going to talk about a lot of things between now and then. And I'm going to be doing a series over the next, let's call it week and a half, those 10 days roughly, where we're going to cover the 9 position groups for this team. And I'm going to call it the Command Core. And what that entails is going through the position, looking at the guys that are going to be heading to camp with this team, assessing the position, talking about the guys we think are going to be contributors at said position, then ranking that position within the division, within the conference, and then within the entire league, just to give it a bit of context as to where I think that particular position group will start the season. Now, that's not necessarily where it will end, obviously, but it is a conversation worth having. So tonight, we are going to talk about the offensive line. And so I think that is an interesting discussion that we are going to have tonight. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you guys because it's one of the more improved positions on this roster, one that I think a lot of you are excited about, as am I. But I think some of you may be jumping the gun as to how good this offensive line is on paper, right? And I think that's where some of this conversation gets underway. But before we get to any of that, I do want to start off tonight's show discussing very briefly the Terry McLaurin contractual situation. So I don't know if you've noticed, I haven't really mentioned anything with that. I told you how I felt about it a long time ago. I've had numerous guests on the summer series, having asked them about the Terry situation because I don't think it is a situation. These are how negotiations work. Some go a lot smoother, others not so much. Clearly, the two sides aren't seeing eye to eye necessarily on maybe years, the amount, both, whatever the case may be. I'm now looking at this period of time from the 8th of July, which is today, all the way until the 22nd of July, which is the start of when the veterans report. I don't think they actually hit the field until the 23rd. They've got up until that point, I believe, to make something happen, right? Which was what I told you. I said, come talk to me sometime in the middle of July, which is where I think this Terry deal gets done. Deadline spur action. I've also, taken the liberty several times to go over the San Francisco 49ers model of negotiations with their players and how late those deals have gotten done in the game. Trent Williams held out of camp the entire year. I think that was more strategically done on both parties' sides because I don't think they wanted to put the wear and tear on Trent Williams' body, and I don't think he wanted to participate in camp. However, as you saw, he didn't necessarily have the best year, and that could have been due to him not being out there for training camp. That said, Boza, Kittle, but Ayuk last year, that's their MO, and Adam Peters was a part of that. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. Even the Sam Cosmi deal, which is the only one that we really have any context with, in this situation. That was done on September the 4th, right? So I'm not telling you that you shouldn't be worried. If you're worried, by all means, knock yourself out. I am not concerned. I fully expect this to get done. And I think it's going to get done over the next week or two. That's the kind of how I see this playing itself out. And we'll have Terry back in the fold, no distractions, and then we can hit the ground running from there. But I am still of the mindset that it's going to get done, which is why you still haven't really heard me talk very much about it. Now we're starting to get close to where I had assumed all along that this would get done. And so now I'm going to start paying attention to social media, seeing if any new news has come out about it, because now I feel like we're getting close to where that deadline, that imaginary deadline that I said was set for getting this done, you're getting closer and closer to that imaginary deadline. So we'll start to see, I think, some things come out about it. This group, one thing I can say about them that I truly appreciate as a fan that has been following this team for far too long and has seen all of the nonsense and chicanery that has gone on here. One thing I can truly appreciate about this new iteration of this organization, with adults actually running the organization, is that if they don't want something out there, it's not getting out there. So if there's communication between Terry and his party and the team, it's not anything that anybody that's reporting any news gets, it's not coming from the team, right? Just like when we heard that Terry was frustrated with the situation, that wasn't coming from the team, that was coming from Terry's camp. They were trying to expedite the process. We talked about that already. So anything that happens, it's not going to come from the team until it's done, right? We won't know until it's done. If they keep their mouth shut on their end, the team's not going to say anything. It'll just pop up. Okay, Terry's got a new 3 or 4 year, extension, X amount of dollars, X amount of guaranteed dollars. It'll make him the blank, fill in the blank, highest paid wide receiver in the league. And then we'll go about a business, right? So just wanted to mention that very quickly. Now I want to transition to some uniform discussion. So obviously the team came out with a post last week that let us know that this week on July 9th, which is tomorrow, we could expect the unveiling of the new alt uniforms that they will be displaying in the 2025 season. They can wear them up to twice if they so choose. A lot of people believe that these alt uniforms that they're going to put out this year may ultimately become the actual uniforms moving forward down the road. They're just kind of testing it out to see how it all goes over. If it goes over well and they like the way that they look and et cetera, they may then transition to these uniforms on a permanent basis. We'll see how all of that ultimately plays itself out. For now, they're just alt uniforms to be something different that they can throw on, twice. Just like the black uniforms, they can wear them twice in a season. I think we wore them last year against Chicago, and then we wore the black uniforms again against the Atlanta Falcons, right? So was it the Falcons game? Well, I think it was the Titans game. We wore the black uniforms the second time. Pretty sure it was the Titans game that we wore the black unis the second time. Don't think we wore the black uniforms against the Falcons. Now I'm thinking about it. I think it was burgundy on burgundy that night, which was a little scary. Because we hadn't done well in Berg on Berg, but they brought it home, right? It took a while for them to wake up, but they brought it home. So I think the second time was the Tennessee game. I could be wrong about that, but ultimately the alt uniforms are going to be displayed tomorrow. They've given you a little tidbit, right? The helmet, I showed you the tweet that the team put out. Everything was pretty much blanked out except the helmet. You could see the W on the side of the helmet, which they're essentially making sure that you understand as a fan that you're not getting, some alt logo. You're not getting the spear on the helmet. People are just going all kinds of different directions with this thing. Oh man, we might get the spear back, or they could bring the old logo back. Nah, ain't none of that popping off. And they made sure they deliberately put that out there with the W showing, so you're still getting the W on the side of the helmet, bro. Like, let's not get carried away here. We may throw it back for you, but you're not getting the whole shebang. You're not getting a different helmet necessarily, but I just think that's something that they wanted to make sure they put out there. Don't get your hopes up. But with that said, I did want to do I wanted to go over a couple of things with you guys from a jersey standpoint. And so let's take a look at what I think the jersey is ultimately going to look like. And it shouldn't be a surprise to you, because we've had these discussions already, but visuals always help, right? It never hurt to have a visual. So here's what I expect it to look like. Some form of this, right? The classic, as many would call it, championship look. White tops, burgundy bottoms, stripe down the side, stripe on the sleeve. Obviously, the Redskins, wording here would be changed, just like they did when we changed to the football team. They just changed this to Washington. You could see some iteration of that. My guess is that if they're going to keep the wording there, it'll say Commanders across the chest, right under the over the numbers, rather than just Washington. If they wanted to, if that's the case, you might as well be the Washington football team and just put the numbers on the side of the helmet. If you're going to do that, like, really personalize it and make it a Commander's uniform. So I think it's going to be some form of this, right? I think a lot of us would be really excited if it was some form of this, right? Like, if you're going to go with some kind of a throwback, this would be awesome. And instead of the R, you could just put the W, and it could be in burgundy on the side of the helmet. And I think all of us would be really excited about that. These are from 2007 against the Giants. And this would be an awesome throwback uniform, but I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting this right here to be the throwback new alt uniform that they're going to give us. I think our owner, Josh Harris, has already made it very clear that they have an affinity for the uniforms of yesteryear. And anybody that's been a fan of this team for a very long time, and even people who aren't fans of this organization, this is the uniform that we are synonymous with, right? This is the uniform we're known for. And I think Josh Harris wants to kind of reinstate that. These are the true colors, right? Now, I know not everyone loves these uniforms. Rio has made it very clear that this is not his favorite uniform. He does not love this combination. He hates these uniforms. He says they look like they're straight out of Marshalls. He's not wrong about the look of these necessarily. Like, there's really no design here. There's no real oomph. But for fans of a certain age, or, for fans who are nostalgic, this is the combination right here, right? This is the look. And the thing that I have been bothered with, because I actually don't have a problem with the jerseys they wear at home currently, which are the burgundy tops with the gold bottoms. I have no issues with those, right? because it closely resembles the colors that we are accustomed to. The white uniforms that they wear on the road with the bottoms that are not burgundy, they're more maroon. That is my issue. That is my struggle with this whole situation, is that those colors are not true to form. And so I always thought that this was a clean look. Again, this isn't for everyone, but I totally expect some form of this with the W on the side of the helmet, and let's go play ball, right? This is kind of what I'm expecting. I don't think they're going to go white on white, even though that was one that we loved with this look, was the white on white. I think they're going to go with, because we don't have a current uniform, right? And this is why they're not going to go white on white. We have white pants. We've worn white on white before with the new current Commanders white tops with white bottoms. We've done that before, right? We don't have a burgundy set of pants that we can wear right now, right? Like the burgundy pants that they wear now, it doesn't give you the feel of these burgundy pants. And the tops obviously have like this weird maroon color because of the black that exists. Because if you want to have an alt uniform of a different color, it must be in one of your base uniforms. That's why the black exists, so that they can have the black uniforms. So I think you're going to see this concept here with the same helmet and just the W on the side. That's my guess. If I'm wrong, way off base, and they come out with some shit that I just didn't see coming, or you just want somewhere to vent, or you want to, because I'm not doing a individual video for this. I know everybody else will tomorrow when they release it sometime in the afternoon, is my guess, noon, 1, 2 o'clock. They'll just post it on their social media. I'll be out of the office. I won't be doing a video. So if you want to come back here and leave your comments, great, because when we go back and we do Louie's lurking in the comments, I'll be able to come back to this video and we can discuss, right? But any comments that I'll have, I'll probably just save it for later on that evening, because the Commanders Kings are going to ride tomorrow night. Obviously, the big topic of discussion will be these alt uniforms, among other things. So I'll just save whatever I have to say for that. But this is what I'm expecting. You know, I'm not going to put too much into, thinking about what it could be. I would love to see some form of this. Just take the W, make it burgundy, throw it on the side of the helmet. I'm all good with that. I'd much rather see these, but I know better, right? I know better. And when you know better, you do better. It's going to look something like the championship jerseys, and that's fine, right? It really doesn't matter to me, to be honest with you. I'm not just worked up over this. Keep winning football games. That's all I really care about at this point. Keep winning games. And if you want to change something, knock yourself out. The uniforms that they're wearing now are what they are. Again, I got no issues with the burgundy home uniforms with the gold bottoms. I don't love the road uniforms. I'd love for these to be your road uniforms, or if you're going to wear this on the road, love for these to be the new road unis. But I think they're going to roll this out, see how it does. This is sort of a test trial for them to see how it's received. If everything goes well, this could be the new getup. They could transition to something that is more of the classic look for the organization. We'll see, right? They've talked about kind of melding the past with the present. This is another way for them to be able to do that, right? So we'll see if that's what they decide to do or not. So we don't have to wait much longer. We'll get some sort of resolution to that situation tomorrow. And I kind of think the only way they can wow me is if they go out of their way to do something that I just didn't see coming.
And again, it may not look exactly like those uniforms. There may be tweaks, i.e., if you remember 2012, they had the burgundy collar that came down. Like, I could see them doing something like that, like little minor tweaks to the uniform. I can't see them coloring outside the lines too much, right? I don't see them coloring outside of the lines too much, but you never know, right? If they come out and it's those 2007s, or even better, the 2002s, then you go, oh, okay. But they're not going to do that, right? They're not going to do that. So if they really wanted to send this fan base into a frenzy, they'd do the 2002s. But again, I can't see them doing that. And furthermore, if you're going to do the 2002s, you got to go all the way with the spear. You can't do the 2002s and then decide to drop a dub on the top of the on the side of the helmet. That's just I mean, shit, I'd take it anyway. But I think you're going to just get the traditional championship look. That's basically what I'm expecting. So we'll see what ultimately happens. Anyway, I wanted to transition to a quick conversation that kind of started this concept of going through all the position groups. Shout out to the legendary Miss P. Really appreciate you as always. She hit me up in the DMs and was like, yo, PFF has us ranked 19th from an offensive line perspective. And she wasn't with that. And so she was referencing this tweet here from George Carmi, who is one half of the Big Doug and Carmi show, which is a great show. They do a great job covering this team. They have fantastic guests on their program. So check them out if you haven't already done so. And so he posted this on X. Big shout out to George. He writes, at PFF has Washington ranked as the 19th best offensive line in the league this year. Conversely, the Eagles are number 1. I'm curious how this will change as the season unfolds. Seems too low for me. Raise hail. So this is the excerpt that PFF added. Each team, I'm assuming, got like a little excerpt, under their ranking. This was the one that showed up for the Commanders. The Commanders' offensive line was a pleasant surprise in 2024. And the unit should only get better with Laramie Tunsil now in the fold. The veteran left tackle is still a pass blocking menace, earning an 89.1 PFF pass blocking grade in 2024, fourth best among 80 qualifying offensive tackles. The unit's true standing will depend on how quickly right guard Sam Cosmi can return after suffering a torn ACL in January. So, I'm not a big PFF guy. So let's start there. I could care less what PFF thinks. That said, it started a conversation, right? And, of course, I'm a lurker. So I went in the comments of that post and others that had that up there just to see what people were thinking. And I saw, people having opinions ranging from top 5 offensive line. Somebody had this, extravagant graph and chart that had us at 8th. And then, other people just, all over the map, right? So it got me to thinking about the offensive line and where I feel it is going into the season. Again, keep in mind, this offensive line hasn't played a single snap together. We are truly basing this off of projections and off of what we expect on paper with these players, right? So with that in mind, I thought, let's deep dive. Let's talk about the roster itself. Let's talk about the offensive line and what we expect the starting group to be, who we expect to make this roster, and then where this line ranks and why, right? So
I want to do this with every positional group. And I figured since this conversation was brought to my doorstep, once again, shout out to the legendary Miss P, I said, why not start with the offensive line? So that is what we're going to do tonight, is we're going to start with the offensive line. So let's dive in. And I want to start with just who are the guys that are going to make up this group of players as we get into our command core offensive line conversation. So in front of you, you see a list of 16 offensive linemen that the Commanders will be taking to camp with them this July, right? This summer. And just for proper context, to your right, you see the offensive line that the Commanders kept last season or last summer at the very end on August 27th when they finalized their 53-man roster. Now, again, we always know everything's subject to change. If you recall last year at the receiver position, Byron Pringle was on the 53-man roster when it was first finalized, right? Clearly, he didn't make it to week one because Noah Brown got released and we went and scooped him up. And Byron Pringle was the one let go to make room for Noah Brown. So obviously these lists are subject to change, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the guys that we're going to take to the season are going to come from this list of 16 guys that you see on the screen right now. And again, for proper context, we only kept 9 offensive linemen last year, right? Of the 9 that we kept last year, 7 of them are going to be on this roster again. So for all of the conversation about, oh my God, we've got so much depth now. Do we? Is this line that much different than it was last year in terms of depth? If they don't make certain moves or they don't add a 10th guy. So let's go over this list and I'll give you the reason why I say this, right? Brandon Coleman, Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley, Cornelius Lucas, Trent Scott, Michael Dieter, Chris Paul. Of this group, 7 of these guys are going to be on the roster. Again, Brandon Coleman, Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley, Trent Scott, and more likely than not, Michael Dieter. Now, you know how I feel about Michael Dieter. I could do without Michael Dieter, right? I think they like Michael Dieter. I think they felt like when Preston did duty last year, he was solid for them. I beg to differ. However, if you keep Dieter, and Scott, assuming that those 2 guys are going to be on this roster, well, that's 7 out of the 9 slots you had last year. Remember, we added 2 tackles, one via a trade in Laramie Tunsil and the other via the draft in Josh Connolly Jr. That's 9 guys. If you're keeping 9, there's your 9, right? God bless and good night. However, we think there's going to be more changes to this line. Again, I've said this. Chris Paul feels like he's skating on thin ice. Michael Dieter could easily not be here, right? And if you do that, if you move on from Chris Paul, and because there's no Cornelius Lucas on this roster, and I'm assuming Chris Paul is going to be gone, right? That's why I said only 7 of these guys are guaranteed to be here. If you move on from Dieter, now that number goes down to 6. Now you've got 3 spots. 2 of them are already filled by the 2 tackles you've brought in here in Tunsil and Connolly Jr., but then you've still got another spot. I was always under the assumption that that 1 spot was going to be given or earned by the guard that we brought in here, guard/center, Nate Herbig. So let's go through the 16 names of the guys that I think are going to make up this roster, or that are going to be in camp that we're going to be picking, in kind of putting together this offensive line group from. Tyler Biadasz, he's a lock. Michael Dieter was here last year. Nick Allegretti, he's a lock. Julian Good-Jones, camp body, and a guy that they have had on the practice squad. He'll probably be on the practice squad again, unless he gets replaced by a guy like Timothy McKay. Nate Herbig, interesting name. Will he be on this roster? Remember, just because they sign guys in the offseason, again, all of these are 1-year deals for the most part. Just because they sign a guy does not mean
they're making the team. James Pierre was signed last year in free agency. He did not make the team. Anthony Pittman was signed in free agency last year at the linebacker position. He did not make the team. So just because Nate Herbig was signed here and we just assume, oh, Nate Herbig, really good depth, can play all three interior offensive line positions. He's definitely here. Not so fast, my friends. Not so fast, right? We think he's going to be here. We'll see. Timothy McKay, guy they spent the most money on as a UDFA. I think he's going to take Julian Good-Jones's spot as the developmental guard that they're going to have on the practice squad. But again, we'll see. Chris Paul is another guy that could turn, from veteran on the roster to on the practice squad. Again, we will see. Andrew, and he was here last year. Same thing with Michael Dieter. He was here last year. Andrew Wiley, locked to make this roster. Brandon Coleman, locked to make this roster. Josh Connolly Jr., locked to make this roster. Bobby Hart was a guy that they put a futures contract on as soon as the season was over, back in February. Again, I don't see Bobby Hart being anything more than a camp body at this point, but again, you never know, right? Tyree Phillips was the guy that was at the rookie minis, right? The rookie camp after the draft. They had all the rookies come out. They had a tryout for some rookies who weren't drafted, and also a few veterans that were looking to latch on to an NFL roster. Phillips was the only guy that they brought on board from that particular tryout, right? Foster Sorrell is a guy that they signed in free agency to be the swing tackle. I always felt like he was the Cornelius Lucas replacement, but if Andrew Wiley is your swing tackle, then you don't need Foster Sorrell, right? You don't need duplicates. They do the same thing. And Wiley even offers you guard value as well. It feels like Andrew Wiley is your swing tackle and Trent Scott would be his, emergency break in case of emergency replacement in that regard. Both of them are guard tackle, guys that can play, 4 out of the 5 spots on the offensive line. In case of Trent Scott, he's supposed to be able to play all 5, but really you're looking at him as a guy that can play 4 out of the 5. If that's the case, Foster Sorrell doesn't serve a purpose, right? So don't think he's going to be here. Again, another guy that they signed to a 1-year deal to come in here and compete. They always talk about competing. That's what they brought Foster Sorrell in here to do. I just don't see it being space for him, right? Trent Scott, guy carved out a niche for himself last year. Feel like he's pretty safe just based off of what he did in the divisional round when Cosme went down, showing that his versatility to go inside, play guard. Also, in the Cowboys game where we had injuries, he had to go play tackle. I just think they are comfortable with him. And when we went to that big jumbo package, he was the 3rd tight end, right? 6th offensive lineman / 3rd tight end that they would put in the game. Remember, he caught a touchdown pass. Jaden Daniels is first of his NFL career against Cincinnati. I just think he's carved out a niche for himself on this roster amongst this offensive line group. Laramie Tunzel, obviously a guy that's going to be here, and then Sam Cosme, same deal. So when you look at this list, I think you're probably, I've said this all along, the number for me is 10 offensive linemen. They carried 9 last year. This is a different roster. Last year's roster, you could get away with 9 offensive linemen because there just wasn't enough good offensive linemen for you to push the button and make it 10. There was no reason for it. I think there's enough good quality bodies here that there should be 10, and that you should be able to, cut off and trim off fat somewhere else that you may have had more guys at last year to accommodate a 10th offensive lineman. That's what feels real to me. But then I say that out of one side of my mouth, and I'm saying, well, they got to keep 4 running backs this year. They kept 3 last year. Well, you're going to have to trim off some fat to make that happen from somewhere else, right? Safety feels like the first position. You kept 6 last year. I think 5 is the number this year. But where else are you going to trim off fat, right? Maybe you only keep 9 offensive linemen again. Maybe there's no need in keeping 10. I think the performances of some of these guys in camp and into the preseason will ultimately determine their fate and how the team moves. But if you ask me, the 10 spots, I like, we can rule some guys out right now. Julian Good-Jones isn't making this roster, right? Timothy McKay isn't making this roster. That's 2. Bobby Hart isn't making this roster. That's 3. I don't want to go too far and say Tyree Phillips isn't making this roster, but Tyree Phillips isn't making this roster. That's 4. So those 4 guys, right? I can't see any way, shape, or form those guys make the team this year. So you essentially got 12 guys vying for 9 or 10 spots. Well, 7 of them are already booked. Biotish is 1, Allegretti is 2, Wiley is 3, Coleman is 4, Connolly Jr. is 5, Trent Scott is 6, Laramie Tunzel is 7, and Cosme is 8. So really, you probably feel good about 8 guys, right? Biotish 1, Allegretti 2, Wiley 3, Coleman 4, Connolly Jr. 5, Trent Scott 6, Tunzel 7, Cosme 8. So you feel good about 8. Like 8 spots are probably spoken for. There's 1 to 2 more spots up for grabs. You probably got 4 guys fighting for 1 or 2 spots. Those 4 guys are Michael Dieter, Nate Herbig, Chris Paul, and Foster Sorrell. That's the way I view this. Until Michael Dieter's not on the roster, Michael Dieter is on the roster, unfortunately for me. But it is what it is. Even if you decide to keep Dieter, I still think Herbig makes a ton of sense. But again, we'll see, right? Maybe they feel comfortable with cutting Nate Herbig and finding a way to stack. I just feel like if you cut Nate Herbig, somebody else is going to scoop him up. Even if they don't scoop him up immediately, you get to week 3. Now you can protect guys, right? You can protect certain players. Maybe he's one of the guys you protect throughout the course of the year. We'll see. But with that said, this is the offensive line. This is what it looks like. Okay. This is what we projected to be. We project the offensive line. We project the offensive line, the starting offensive line, to be left to right, Laramie Tunzel at left tackle, Brandon Coleman at left guard, Tyler Biotish at center. When he's healthy, Sam Cosme at right guard, and at right tackle, Josh Connolly Jr. Now, again, when is Cosme healthy? I've said that my goal for him is week 7 against Dallas, the first Dallas game. That would be mid-October. That makes sense to me. That would put him 9 months out from when the injury occurred. We keep hearing that he's making tremendous progress. I've said that I'm still not ruling him out for week 1, but I don't think they're going to rush him, nor should they, right? So in his absence, Nick Allegretti makes the most sense. Nick Allegretti makes the most sense. So in camp, the starting lineup has been Laramie Tunzel at left tackle, Brandon Coleman at left guard, Tyler Biotish at center, Nick Allegretti at right guard, and Andrew Wiley at right tackle, because they're not just going to give the job to Josh Connolly Jr. It's the same thing they did with Brandon Coleman last year. They made him earn it. And I would say we got to the week of the first preseason game, joint practice versus the Jets, and that's when they had turned the job over fully to Brandon Coleman, and he was going to be the starting left tackle, not platooning like it ultimately played out, but he was going to be the guy. And then he got injured in that Jets joint practice, or right before it, I believe. And he had been getting all of the reps, first team reps, like the 3 practices before. So they made him earn it, just like they made Jaden earn the starting job last year. It was Mariota taking number 1 reps early on in camp, and then Jaden eventually got it, and then they said, okay, he's the starting quarterback, right? They're going to do the same thing to Josh Connolly Jr. They're going to make him earn it. The only guy that's not going to have to earn it is Trey Amos. They're like, no, you're starting, bro. Okay, you're starting the corner. But they're going to make Josh Connolly Jr. earn it, and he will earn it, and he will be the starting right tackle. And when that happens, Wiley could theoretically be kicked down inside to guard. But I'm not comfortable with my swing tackle being in the game when there's a very capable guy in Nick Allegretti who can't also play tackle for you, sitting there waiting to go in the game. Just put him in at right guard and let Andrew Wiley sit on the sideline. So if something should go down at tackle, we've got our guy ready to go in the game. So anyway, that group I just said, and obviously it's subject to change. I read you what PFF said. A large part of the conversation about the offensive line and why they were ranked so low in a lot of your estimations, 19th overall, had to do with Sam Cosmi's health. I think they're undervaluing the totality of the line and all the changes that have been made. Like, they basically said, oh, we're getting Laramie Tunsil, who was our fourth best pass blocking tackle. That's cool. But if Sam Cosmi's not healthy, the rest of the line is average at best. That's what they're basically saying. And I vehemently disagree with that. I think, and again, here's the thing. And let's have a legit conversation now. Let's talk. So here's the thing. So Miss P was like, that's too low. I read you George Carmi's tweet. He said he thinks that's too low. And I understand why people think that's too low. 19 feels a bit low. I agree, right? But there are fans that already want to put them into the top 10, and this group hasn't played a snap together. Now, there's some things that we got to talk about, right? Because there are concerns. While this is one of the most upgraded groups along this team's different cores that we're going to talk about, right? Different rooms. I'm going to talk about each of these rooms. You could argue the offensive line has been upgraded the most. They see the talent that is Jaden Daniels, and they vowed to protect him and put better players in front of him. And that was the absolute right move, right? Absolute right move. The Texans, I think where they made a mistake, and I heard Albert Breer talk about this, and he was talking about it like it was a negative for us, right? Whereas he said the Commanders offensively, they didn't actually get better. They just streamlined what they did a year ago. He's not wrong necessarily, although I do think they got better. They improved and upgraded the offensive line. They added Deebo Samuel. They added Jalen Lane. They added Bill in the backfield. You expect there to be more explosiveness, more dynamic ability, more speed, and more protection for the best asset and the biggest asset, arguably, that this organization's ever had. So while we haven't made an abundance of changes like the Texans did last year, where they went and got Joe Mixon, they went and got and traded for Stephon Diggs, and they made all of these moves, the most important thing was to protect the quarterback, which they failed to do in 2024. And yes, the injuries really hurt them. You know, Diggs went down, Collins went down for a little while, then Tank went down late in the season, and they just were decimated by injuries. But the offensive line was the problem. They couldn't protect. No matter who was at wide receiver, they were struggling to protect CJ Stroud. Well, we said, no. We're not going to go out here and trade for this guy, even though we traded for Deebo Samuel, and go get this guy and go get that guy and try to upgrade this roster all these different ways. We're going to protect our biggest asset. And we're going to put these guys in front of him, and that's what they did. And so I think that's the way to go about it. We've seen what Jaden can do if he's got time in the pocket. These guys should provide him with that. With that said, though, Laramie Tunsil comes here with some baggage. And it's not something that is like super negative. Like, he's not a locker room cancer. You know, he's not a bad teammate. You know, he, I think, is going to be exactly what we need at left tackle.
but he comes with some penalty issues, right? Last year was one of his worst years from a penalty standpoint. And his numbers have fluctuated throughout the course of his career, and it may be different here. Again, I was of the mindset of we probably should wait to just make sure that Laremy Tunsil is as advertised before we just give him an extension. We probably know what we're getting here. We probably know what we're getting here. We're getting a top 5, possibly top 3 left tackle in the league, and he's only 30 years old. He's probably got at least another 5, possibly 6 more good quality years of football if he is what we think he is. We have no reason to believe that he's not. The penalties are an issue. One of the things that we didn't really do last year was we didn't commit penalties. Not on the offensive line, at least. There were few and far between. Ask yourself this. Ask yourself this. How many times did we have a Brandon Coleman false start or a Brandon Coleman holding penalty? Ask yourself. Now, again, Brandon Coleman was getting help. He was getting chips. He was getting doubles. So he didn't necessarily have to worry about getting out of his stance, not getting beat because he was getting help. But he wasn't getting help on every single snap. There wasn't double teams on every single snap. I'm not telling you that Brandon Coleman was perfect last year. I'm not telling you that Brandon Coleman didn't commit false start penalties. I'm pretty sure he had 2 or 3 last year. I just don't remember any of them. I don't remember many holding penalties by Brandon Coleman. I was listening to John Keim talk about the offensive line, and he said, if we can get Tunsil to have 6 or 7 penalties this year, false start penalties, we should be good with that. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Now, guys commit penalties, all right? Like Trent Williams commits penalties. We're not going to sit here and act like the best of the best aren't committing penalties. I've seen Trent Williams jump false start. I've seen Trent Williams commit holding penalties. Shit happens. 6 is a lot, though. 7 is a lot. That's something that this offense didn't deal with last year. We didn't have a lot of penalties, pre-snap penalties. DQ used to go out of his way to say, hey, that's the type of stuff we can control. Can't have those. He's like, combat penalties, I can deal with those. In the heat of the battle, poor hand placement, something happens, you get caught, it happens. I can live with those. Pre-snap penalties, can't deal with those. Well, that may be something we got to deal with. There weren't a lot of times last year where we were in 2nd and 3 and it turned into 2nd and 13 or 2nd and 8. There weren't a lot of times where we were in 3rd and 2. I'm not telling you that this didn't exist, because it did, but there weren't many times that 3rd and 3 turned into 3rd and 8, or 3rd and 3 turned into 3rd and 13 because of a penalty by one of our offensive linemen. That just didn't happen a lot last year. It happened a lot with Laremy Tunsil last year. Man had 12 false start penalties and another 6 holding penalties. So if he cuts that number in half, that's 9 penalties, folks. That's a lot of penalties. A lot of penalties. I think he was top 7, if I'm not mistaken, definitely top 10 in penalty yards last year. That's a lot of moving in the wrong direction. Not that we can't overcome it, but for a team that had to rely on 4th downs a lot last season, you really don't want to be living in those types of situations and hurting yourself like that. So you have to take that into consideration with Laremy Tunsil, right? For all of the good that he's going to do, there is, just a little bit of a drawback there, right? I'll take it. I'll take those penalties knowing that our star quarterback's blind side is protected. If that's the cost of doing business, sign me up. Here's another thing. You have to take it. We don't know what Brandon Coleman, the guard, is. We just assume, he's playing his natural position. He should be great for us at guard. We don't know that. Now, do we? We've never seen this man take an NFL snap. You might have watched him take snaps at TCU at left guard. I did. Pretty sure some of you did as well. You haven't seen him take an NFL snap at left guard. Now, have you? So we don't know if Brandon Coleman is any good at guard. We just assume he should be really good at guard. And he may ultimately be very good at guard. But until we see it, you can't just assume that he's going to be a slam dunk at left guard. We know what we have in Biotish. Like I said, I feel comfortable at right guard no matter who's playing there. A healthy Nick Allegretti, because he was broken down by the time the end of the season got here. A healthy Nick Allegretti is solid. When Cosme comes back, you know you got an A-plus player there at right guard. And then Josh Connolly Jr. We have no idea how good he's going to be as a rookie. I just always automatically with rookies assume that there's going to be growing pains. I just always automatically assume that. And keep in mind, Josh Connolly Jr. was a left tackle in college, not a right tackle. Again, it's something that repetition. He'll be fine at right tackle, right? But everything's reversed on the other side, something he's going to have to get used to, all right? Everybody wants to point to the rep at the Senior Bowl against Mike Green and talk about, you know, his lack of, you know, play strength and things of that nature. There was a little bit of that on tape. You know, it wasn't a ton of it, but it was enough of it that you say to yourself, I'm slightly concerned. This is different. This is grown man strength you're dealing with now. You know, you were dealing with dudes that were the same age as you, 19, 20, 21 years old. Now you're dealing with grown men, 27, 28 years old, who they like that. You got to block George Karlaftis this year. You got to block Max Crosby this year, right? Like you dealing with grown men, dudes that are going to bull rush you, that are going to try you. Is he ready for that? Don't know. I wish I had the answers. I don't know. Athletically, I got no worries. He can move his feet. Dudes ain't going to be running around Josh Connolly, right? I got no qualms about that. What happens when somebody sticks their hand in that man's chest and he's not ready and overpower him? Oh, shit. I expect that. The question is Jaden going to be able to avoid danger, get out of there, and you know, be unscathed? That's the question. Ultimately, I think he's going to be good. But he's a rookie. And rookies get baptized. So while we're very excited and enthused about this offensive line, as you should be, I am too. Just keep in mind that there's still a lot of question marks. Still a lot of question marks. Primarily at left guard and right tackle. Still question marks. With that said, though, here's how I rank the offensive line. In the division, I have this offensive line ranked second, only behind, of course, you guessed it, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're the best offensive line in football. So, really not much to talk about. But I feel like our line is better than the Cowboys line, and it's definitely better than the Giants line as constructed, even without Sam Cosmi in the lineup. You go to the conference, so you broaden and you widen that lens, and you extend it to the entire conference. Where does this offensive line for the Commanders rank heading into the season? Right now, I have this Commanders offensive line ranked 8th in the conference, behind Philadelphia, in no order, in no particular order. Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta, San Francisco, and the Rams. All of those offensive lines, I think, are better than ours when fully healthy. All right, when fully healthy. Obviously, last year, the Vikings lost their left tackle. If he's fully healthy, you could argue that Christian Darrisaw, and Brian O'Neill are the best bookend tackles in the league. We play them this year, by the way. Same could be said for the Chargers, right? They just invested in Joe Alt last year, Jr., and they already had Rashawn Slater. You could argue those are the two best bookend tackles in football. So, assuming health, obviously, Trent Williams missed a chunk of the season for the 49ers. Assuming he's healthy, that 49ers offensive line is pretty good. Guys stepped up. Dominic Pooney was really good last year as a rookie out of Kansas. Guys stepped up on that offensive line, right? So those, I've got us 8th behind those teams in the conference. Then when you expand it to the league, I've got us 13th. I've got us 13th, and I think that's a good spot for us right now. And obviously, that's with room to grow. PFF had us at 19th overall. I don't think we're that low, but I don't think we're a top 10 offensive line yet either. I don't think we're top 12 yet either. Like, you have to earn your way into that conversation. We're not there yet. We have to actually see it on the field. We have to have something tangible that makes us feel good about this offensive line. I got to see Brandon Coleman at left guard and what that looks like. I want to see Laramie Tunsil on the field, even though I feel really confident that we're going to get a hell of a football player. And Bobby Johnson, O-line Bobby Johnson, said that he feels like the tempo that we play at and Jaden's cadence and the rhythm, it's going to take care of some of those penalties that existed for him in Houston. I hope that's the case. Because really, that's my chief concern, are the penalties. I'm not worried about Laramie Tunsil getting beat. Everybody gets beat, but it's just not going to happen very often with him. I'm not concerned about Biadish. I'm really not concerned about right guard, but I do have questions about Josh Connolly Jr. He's a rookie. I got to see it. He's 21 years old. He's really young. You know what I mean? So I got us 13th in the league behind the following teams. Philadelphia, again, in no particular order. Philadelphia, Buffalo, Denver, Indianapolis, Chicago, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Minnesota, the Chargers, 49ers, Ravens, and Rams. Then there's us at 13. So I feel good about this offensive line. There's no way you would have gotten me to put this offensive line any higher than 25 going into last year. Now, I'm always one of those guys that's telling you it's not as bad as you think. That was always my line with the offensive line. Even going back to 2023's debacle up front, it's not as bad as you think. And I still contend that it wasn't as bad, but EB putting the offensive line in such a quandary by running such long developing routes put the offensive line in a tough spot. Could have really taken a lot of pressure off of them if he just got the ball out of Sam Howell's hands. But that's no here nor there, right? This line overachieved last year. But I was one of those ones that said, I don't think this line is as bad as you guys think it's going to be. And even if it's not great, Jaden will handle it. And he did. And he did. So this line, though, light years ahead of where we were last year. You would have never gotten me to put this offensive line, the line that we had last year, you would have never gotten me to put that group anywhere near the top half of the league. Couldn't get me to do it. This year, I think we're a top half of the league offensive line unit. And I think there's a lot of room for growth. And if Cosme comes back healthy, Coleman settles in, and Josh Connolly Jr. is what we think he can be, you could be talking about a top 7, potentially top 5 unit when this thing's all said and done at the end of 2025. So the room for growth is definitely there, but we still got to see it. So that's the offensive line for me. We will go through every position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, linebacker, corner, and safety throughout this process on the command core. And we will go through the guys that are going to be competing at those positions, how many roster spots we think will be reserved for that position, what we think the starting group will look like, and then where we think those starters actually rank amongst the rest of the league, right? League, conference, division. If you're talking depth, I love the depth of this offensive line, and the depth, the entire group as a whole probably would be moved up in my estimation. If you look at some of the depth, I'll say this: I am still not as comfortable at tackle with Andrew Wiley, in particular left tackle. I'm comfortable with him at right tackle after what he was able to do last year. I'm just not comfortable with Andrew Wiley being my starting left tackle under any circumstances. So I wonder if that, scenario presented itself. Would they kick Coleman out and insert Wiley or Allegretti to guard? Or would they just leave Coleman there, which I think is what ultimately they would do? If he's having success, why uproot him and mess with his mechanics, leave him there? And this is what you kept Andrew Wiley for, right? I'm not as comfortable with him coming into the game as I was Cole Luke. Problem with Cole Luke was the last couple years, last year in particular, he just wasn't healthy. So when we needed him, it felt like he was never there last year. But I sure would have loved Cole Luke being back here. That's for certain. Anyhow, let's get to the comments and then we'll get out of here. So, Shadow Striker 789. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Really appreciate you. Who writes, boo! Jump scare. 2022 O-line versus the Giants. Charles Leno Jr., Andrew Norwell, Tyler Larson, Sam Cosby, and Benin Poate. Now Benin Poate was not an offensive lineman. He was a defensive lineman. But Charles Leno Jr., Andrew Norwell, Tyler Larson, Sam Cosme, and who was our starting right tackle in 2022? Oh man. In 22, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Cosme was still playing tackle then. If Norwell and Larson were here, that means Cosme was still playing right tackle, and the other Panther was here. Oh my God, what's the black dude's name? Jesus. It was a disaster. He got hurt like the first week he was here. See, Ron Rivera brought these two old geezers in here at guard. It was a disaster. Larson wasn't the starting center initially. It was the dude from the Giants that was the starting center that year. Oh my God. Oh my God. Maybe he was 2023. The dude from the Giants was 2023. He might have been 2022. But it was Trey Turner. Thank you guys. Door Gunner, Miss Perry, Jay Reyes. Yeah, Trey Turner stinking ass. It was a mess. And Cosme was still at tackle. So
I think Chase Rouillet was still here in 2022. Like he had just come back from injury, I believe. It didn't last long. I think he got hurt again, and then we had to rely on Tyler Larson. But Larson was solid when he was healthy. He was always hurt too. Boy, that was a bad offensive line in 2022. My God. Leno, Norwell, Larson, in for Rouillet, and Trey Turner and Cosme at tackle. Yeah. Boy, we've come a long way. That's definitely boo. Don't want to ever do that again. That's for damn sure. Yikes. Wowzers. Voices of Martians. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Voices of Martians. Right. Woke up at 4:50 a.m. to make sure I could secure my non-scalper priced tickets for the Madrid game. Waited over 5 hours. I am beyond excited. I saw some people online. I think I saw like JP Finley retweet this. Somebody was like, well, so you're telling me there's a chance. And he was like 93,003 in line. And he was in a queue. It's like, God damn. Jesus. I didn't realize so many people were that excited to go to the game. I knew that people were excited. And that stadium holds quite a few people. But my goodness. 93,000? Yikes. Wowzers. It was like it said like you have over 3 hour wait or something like that. And I'm pretty sure that was much longer than 3 hour wait. You know what I mean? That was crazy. I hope you got the tickets though. Sound like you scored the tickets. If you did, congratulations. And you know what you got to do. But we'll talk more about that when we get closer to that week 11 matchup. That should be a lot of fun, man. I wish I was in a position. I wish I would allow myself to just go to something like that. That would be awesome. You get to experience Madrid and Spain and see your favorite team compete. Kill two birds with one stone. That's going to be an awesome trip for those who are going to be in attendance. Voices of Martians. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, also, got another favorite moment of the season for you, Lou. And it's every time that OZ went airborne across the camera. Crack me up every time. I don't quite remember that one. Airborne across the camera. I don't remember that one. You'd have to remind me of that. There were so many great moments last year. And if you bring it up, I might be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But there's just so many great moments last year. You know, things that you look at and you just go, man, that was dope. Or it makes you laugh, right? You crack up watching it. So last year was special, but let's see if we can't make this season even more special. JP, my guy John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JP writes, we're going to find out how improved this O-line is because we're facing some elite defenses or some elite pass rushers, but getting Tunsil was huge. Yeah, I mean, you just look at the schedule, right? And you look at the teams that we have to face. Denver had the best pass rush in the league. I mean, they cleared the rest of the league by, I think it was 9 sacks. They had 63 sacks on the season, and the next closest team had 54, right? They're on the schedule, and their pass rush comes from everywhere. But they got Nick Bonito, who I think is a stud, right? He had double-digit sacks last year. They got the Allen kid from Arizona, who's really good. I thought Arizona was foolish to let him leave. He learned from J.J. Watt and then went to Denver and had himself
a hell of a campaign last year. They're just getting sacks from everywhere. So you got to deal with them. You got to deal with Chris Jones and George Karlaftis next season, who played for the Chiefs, obviously. You got to deal with Max Crosby, plays for the Raiders. You got to deal with all of the pass rushers that the Falcons added, 2 in the draft. You know, one that a lot of you got enamored with, right? And James Pierce Jr. And they added Gumby, right, to that group. And they drafted the kid out of Georgia. And so they got some dudes, right? We know the Giants and what they present. That's week 1, right? Welcome to the NFL. So, yeah, it's pretty steep. And it's quick. Giants early, Raiders early, Falcons early. Like, we're going to find out real quick how good this offensive line is. Real quick. So, I'm glad we made the improvements to the offensive line that we did. And the depth, too, because I actually thought the group wasn't that bad last year. They just ran out of gas. They ran out of gas and health, right? It was a war of attrition, and they didn't make it to the finish line. They fought like hell, though. So that depth is going to be huge. I agree. Getting Tunzel was huge. Getting Tunzel was huge. The legendary Miss P writes, first of all, thank you for being a member for 45 months. About to hit that 4-year Annie, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. Salute. PSA, hit the like button, subscribe, and etc. Y'all know the drill. Really appreciate you for that public service announcement. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I've been uploading like crazy over the last couple of weeks. Hit that notification bell, right? So you don't miss anything. But more importantly, if you're here and you want to support, hit the like button. Costs you nothing, but helps this channel grow exponentially. Christopher McLaurin. Been a member for 9 months. My guy, C-Mac. Really appreciate you. Chris writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always. Hard to assess O-line ranking with Cosme out. Curious your thoughts. CBS had 3 commanders in the top 100. Daniels at 33, Terry at 81, Bobby at 88. Missing Louie and Tunzel? Yeah, I think they are missing Louie and Tunzel. To me, Louie should have been ahead of Bobby. For as big as Bobby was for this defense with his leadership, and he led the team in tackles. Again, I don't want to minimize Bobby's importance last year. His leadership, without question, one of the driving forces to 12-5 and the NFC Championship game appearance. His play on the field, we would not have been even a half solid defense without him. You don't win the Tampa game more likely than not without him recovering that fumble, right? Bobby was huge. That said, Frankie Louie was the guy that teams defensively had to make sure they accounted for. He was the guy that was creating mischief and havoc on opposing teams. So how Louie isn't, ranked in the top. At one point, we started to look up crazy stats like over 100 tackles, over 10 sacks, and I think it was over 5 pass breakups. Like, we were starting to look up crazy shit. Yeah, he didn't hit any of those benchmarks. I think he hit over 100 tackles, but they were like combined. But he didn't get to 10 sacks, obviously, and he didn't get to 5 pass breakups. I think he ended up having like 3 pass breakups or so. But at one point, it felt like he was going to eclipse all of those. How many players have done that in NFL history, right? And an interception. But he was the guy, right? To me, he should have been on that list. But, there's a lot of good players in the NFL. A lot of good players in the NFL. And so if you're there's over 1,800 players in the league, and you're making a list of the best 100, you can't put everybody on the list. I get it. Not everybody's going to make it. How Tunzel, who we think is a top, 5 tackle in this league for sure, how he's not on the list behooves me. But again, there's only 100 spots. The Texans weren't good on offense. Their offensive line was a mess. He probably got sucked into that, and that happens too. All right, guilty by association. So, Swaggy P, been a member for 32 months. Really appreciate you. Swaggy P writes, and we almost made the offs with that 2022 O-line. 2022 was one of those seasons where we were so lost as a fan base. We were so lost. And to your point, for all the struggles that year, we got all the way to the end of the season and we had a shot. We beat the Giants in that game after the bye. We should have beat the Giants in the game before the bye, but if you beat the Giants in that game after the bye at home, which Charles Leno, I think, was directly to blame for us not winning that game because he had such an awful first quarter. He couldn't block Kayvon Thibodeau in the first quarter. Remember, he had the sack force fumble and he had like a tackle for loss, and he was just killing Charles Leno in the first quarter of that game. But that sack force fumble changed the entire tenor of that game. I think we were up 6-0. And after that, it felt like, I want to say the floodgates opened. It's like the Giants scored a gajillion points that night. I think they scored 20 points. But who knows if they score that without that forced fumble. But yeah, even with that, we were 7-5 that season at one point before the tie with the Giants. We were 7-5 going into that first Giants game. After starting the season, what did we start the season that year? 1-4, something like that. I remember us winning 6 out of 7. So we were probably 1-4. And then got hot, won a bunch of games, and even beat the Eagles on a Monday night. That team had no business going to the playoffs. That wasn't a good team. And even with the struggles of that offensive line, we still almost made the playoffs. That wasn't a testament to great coaching or, a roster that overachieved. We played bad teams. We almost lost to the Colts, and we were getting our asses kicked against the Colts, really. If not for the turnovers, Sam Ellinger made his first career start, and he was carving us up. We should have lost that game. Like, those are the teams that we were beating. Like, we beat the Texans, I believe, that year. I want to say that was the same year with Davis Mills. That was right before they were ass, We beat the Falcons with Marcus Mariota. And all they had to do was run the ball at the 2-yard line. Instead, they had Mariota throw a pass that got bad in the air and picked off. Like, all they had to do was run the ball, they would have beat us. We weren't a good team. So, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. With that nasty offensive line, we still almost found a way. But that was the story of Ron Rivera. Almost doesn't count. Almost doesn't count. That was the story, right? So glad we are removed from those days. I don't even like talking about those days. They feel like 20 years ago, even though it was just the other day. We were just literally this time 2 years ago, we were getting excited about Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell, right? I was killing you guys.
with this sound drop.
New how order. New.
So, like, I get it. It's not that far removed, but you see the smile on my face? That is the smile of a man who realizes we finally made it and we never have to go through that again. Or at least not anytime in the near future. We don't have to do that anymore. That's our past. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. Really appreciate y'all for kicking it with the kid a little bit tonight. Quick programming note. The Commanders Kings will be live tomorrow night. Barring some kind of unforeseen circumstances, we should be live tomorrow night. And we will give you our opinions on the uniforms. We'll talk about some other topics, relating to this team. We'll check the pulse of the other guys as to how they're feeling about the Terry situation. I think most of them probably feel the way that I do, but I don't like putting words in anyone's mouth. So we're going to see if their meter has changed at all, and we'll talk about a few other topics that are surrounding this team as we head towards training camp. So that should be a fun show tomorrow. And I will probably be back on Thursday night with a new position to break down. And maybe I'll give you my individual thoughts on the uniforms. We'll really go in depth. Like I said, I'll probably do that with the Commanders Kings tomorrow night. So you may not need to hear that from me again on my channel individually, but I may still talk about it. I may have some other things that I want to say, but ultimately I should be back Thursday night and we should be breaking down a new position, probably go to the defensive line and knock that one out. So be on the lookout for that. I'm working on summer series and a guest. I had one cancel on me, still got two more in the chamber, but got to see if we can get our schedules aligned. If that happens, then we only got 2 episodes left of the summer series this weekend and next. So hopefully I'll be able to give you 2 more episodes. If not, it's been a very, very successful summer series run this year already as is. But the goal is to get to the finish line. 2 more episodes will do that for us. Hopefully I can get those guests that I have lined up to meet with their schedules and we can get these things knocked out. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Y'all know what it is. Post up, take command. Until next time, you guys. Oh, hold on. Got a super chat here from Joe Rockhead. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Joe Rockhead. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, off work tonight. My alter ego front desk is on vacay. I think we're going through the I don't believe it till they do it again combo. Haters betting against us, lovers expecting something amazing. So I myself am somewhat in that conversation. I expect, though, us to do it again, but I can't fully allow myself to go as ham as I want to, because I still do suffer from PTSD, right? That's the last piece, as I've said. And in order for that to dissipate and for me to just fully immerse myself in this run that we're about to be on, I got to see it one more time. Again, and I said this to John Kahn on the summer series, there's a sector of this fan base that has never seen this team go to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. There's a large chunk of this fan base that hasn't seen it. And again,
when it happened the last time, I was a teeny tiny tot. Probably way more locked in than a kid that age should be. But damn it, man. As an adult, haven't seen it. The best I've ever seen them follow up a playoff season was 8-7-1. It's not good enough for me. So a lot of people are saying, hey, do that shit again. It's a lot of that I'm seeing here of late. I saw Wale with Cam Newton, and Cam kind of like, hey, you think this? Nah, this ain't no RG3 shit, man. Come on now. You played the position. You seen what that shit looked like. This is different. You should know, of all people. But you got people questioning. So guess what? We got to show them. We got to show them. At some point before camp, y'all know what we're going to do. We're going to toast to the season like we did last year, like we did the year before and the year before that. So it'll probably be, my guess is we will probably toast to the season on the 17th. The night before the rookies hit camp. If not the 17th, definitely the 18th, somewhere in that neighborhood. Worst case scenario, the 21st. Right? We're going to toast somewhere in that window to the season. And it is at that point where I'm going to give you I've asked everyone the question pretty much that I've had on what is a successful season for the Commanders look like. I'm going to give you my answer. Haven't given you mine yet. But I'm going to give you mine. So we'll get to that a little bit down the road. But yeah, man, Joe Rockhead, there's a lot of people that suffer from PTSD that I'm one of them. I need to see it one more time. But unlike past years where I didn't believe I was going to see it, I actually believe I'm going to see it this year. I'm expecting to see it this year, but I can't just go full bore like I want to. I want to act a fool. I can't act as big a fool until I know this is legit. But boy, it feels legit. You got 5. I got 5 on it. This feels legit. This feels legit. Anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, I'm your man Louie T signing off. Peace.